Fantasy managers have to track big changes statistically to the sport they're following. In the case of football, some of the big changes include um, pass-heavy quarterbacks. If you look at the top 100 single season uh, passing yardage totals, only 11 came in the last century. The other 89 came since 2000, and most of those came since 2010 or even 2015. It's an entire shift in how quarterbacks play, which has led to an entire shift in how wide receivers and even tight ends produce. And it's changed the way fantasy managers draft. If we were to go back to 1980 and draft, it would probably be running back, running back, running back, running back, running back for, for maybe the 18 of the first 20 picks. Because back then you had one running back and that was the running back on the team. And as long as they were healthy, they were going to start more or less, and get you 15, 18, 20 touches, whatever it was. That's who you wanted. You wanted two or three of those guys. And then, you could backfill with, your generic, 2,500 yard, 16 touchdown quarterback. Um, or your 800 receiving yard wideout with 4 touchdowns. We're in the midst of this total transformation, and it's not going away anytime soon, it seems. And so we have had to adjust as fantasy managers to that reality. Similarly, we've had to adjust to, in a different way, quarterbacks running more. And if you look back before, the current crop of quarterbacks, I don't know if it would be like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, you look at it, Michael Vick was number one in all-time quarterback rushing yards with about 6,100. And then if you want to find the next one, more than 1,000 below that, just under 5,000, was Randall Cunningham. And then Steve Young was at 4,200. And then the number 4 on the list, Fran Tarkenton, with like 3,700. So that was the state of things. Now you have, obviously, Josh Allen with like 6 straight seasons of at least 100 carries. And Lamar Jackson, of course, who now leads the way with most QB rushing yards in history. He has, I think, 7 straight seasons with at least 100 rushing attempts. There's Cam Newton, obviously. Russell Wilson. These are all guys who are ahead of Fran Tarkenton. And all but Josh Allen are ahead of Steve Young and Randall Cunningham. This is the shift in the NFL. And in 10 to 15 years, it is quite possible that the top 100 all-time rushing quarterbacks will feature 89 guys from the previous 15, 20 years, just like with the pass-heavy quarterbacks. What I want to talk about briefly today in that context is that we don't yet fully understand the impact that all of that running might have on a quarterback. It's something I've talked about on the blog before. It was curious to me that Cam Newton went from elite to washed up seemingly overnight. It wasn't overnight, but it was a span of about 2 years. Everything changed. And so I researched all the run-friendly quarterbacks, the dual-threat, quote-unquote, quarterbacks. And when did they have their big decline that they never recovered from? What was their age? It was pretty fascinating because while it wasn't a specific age, by 30, 31 years old, most of those guys had such a regression that it was significant enough to get people to shock managers at how poorly they did, but also they didn't recover. That maybe they pushed up a little bit the next season, but they weren't the same. And whatever they were at 29, 30, that was their peak. You get the occasional Russell Wilsons who seem to defy that. I mean, he's holding on, and he looked washed up 2, 3 years ago. Um, but he did well enough last year, and he still hasn't, seemingly a starting job. So, good for him. And he is the exception to the rule. Most of these guys poop out at about 30, 31 years old. Um, you also get guys, Michael Vick, suspended for 2 seasons, whatever it was. And so that kind of stops the clock a little bit. He picks back up. He does great. And then what was it, like age 34 or something like that? He petered out. So, this is kind of, we are in the dawn of this era, even though Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and others have had such an impact on the game. We don't yet know when they're going to decline. Obviously, we'll never know until it happens. But we can't really say, well, look at these 50 other examples, and in 44 of those cases, this is what happened, and it just doesn't work that way. So there is some concern that starting next season in 2026, Josh Allen will be 30. And at the end of next season, at the end of the 2026 season, Lamar Jackson will be 30. So for dynasty managers, you have to at least consider the possibility that a rapid, unexpected decline could happen to one of these guys, just like it happened to Cam Newton, just like it's happened to other quarterbacks who seemingly have been great until they weren't. Randall Cunningham was, a fantastic in his day, fantasy quarterback. Um, rushed a lot back then. I mean, I think it was his first 6 seasons he rushed like 100+ times in like his first 3 times in his first 6 seasons, or 90+ or something like that. Then he got knocked out like the first few plays of the next season. Clock kind of stops. He has a huge year the next year. I think I don't know if he won comeback player of the year or something, but it was like a big season. He was never the same after that. So starting when he was 30, in his age 30 season, he was done. This is the guy who was one of the best in the game for his era, and a trailblazer in the run friendly quarterback scheme, the dual threat kind of possibilities that we see today with so many quarterbacks. He was a unicorn back then, and by the time he was 30, he was essentially done. I should say that he had one, I forgot how old he was, 34, 35, where that may have been his comeback, like comeback player of the year type situation. But that was after several years of just either being hurt or, struggling through as a shell of his former self. So these things happen, but a lot of times these days, quarterbacks are not going to get 4 or 5 years to figure things out again, even if you're Randall Cunningham. At some point, teams are going to give up on you. We've seen it happen. Teams gave up on Cam Newton when he was, 33. We could argue that that was for the best. At the same time, he showed flashes, and perhaps a fully healthy Cam Newton could have had the kind of late career outburst that Randall Cunningham had. The point is, we have seen time and again, granted, small sample size, but in that sample size, time and again, by 30, 31, it's kind of an unexpected drop off. So I don't know. I can't say, well, I'm going to rank Josh Allen really low next season, or in Dynasty, he's my QB7. It's not in fact, I just don't trust him. Whatever it is, we just have to accept the fact that, well, in limited sample size, this is a concern. And Lamar Jackson might have 2 great seasons remaining. Josh Allen might have 2 great seasons remaining. But this also reminds me a little bit about Tom Brady as he started getting into his 40s, particularly when he went to Tampa Bay, even though he had a perfect situation there. There was a sense of, okay, every time you draft Tom Brady now in your fantasy draft, at age 42, 43, and so on, you know that the risk of a major drop off is there. And it doesn't mean that you don't draft him. It just means that you accept the bigger risk because age eventually reaches a point of a huge drop off unless you retire. And my consideration of this is, yes, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are elite. And I'm also a little more anxious about drafting them than I was last year. And I was more anxious last year than I was even the year before that. That we don't know what happens when you rush 100 plus times in a season where you're oftentimes getting knocked down. And that impact that it has. And the last thing I'll say on this is Josh Allen, I think it was 3 summers ago, his head coach said that he was gonna run less. And I remember his, fantasy prognosticators were saying, and I don't fault them for it. Whoa, maybe we should drop Allen's value a little bit because he's not going to run as much. Because they want to, the coach wanted to preserve his body basically, and Josh Allen kind of agreed. It seemed like he wanted to make sure he was playing well into his 30s. Well, it hasn't happened. And so at some point, there's going to be a necessity for that to happen. And what you want to make sure is that you're not stuck with a more of a pocket passer Josh Allen who you drafted in the 3rd round, because a pocket passer Josh Allen is not going to get you obviously the same value as a dual threat Josh Allen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen this year. It just means that at some point the bottom is going to fall out. Either he regresses big time and or he finally stops running 100 plus times in a season. Instead, it's 70. And as a result, you're talking about 200, 300 fewer yards and several fewer touchdowns. That can matter in the grand scheme of things. And that is where you want to dock his value. So we don't know what's going to happen. At the same time, each year for a run heavy quarterback, the risk becomes that much greater. And the not knowing is what concerns me. So the not knowing whether this is something that truly is a trend that we can bank on, or whether or not I'm just playing with a small subset and that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are going to be doing this age 32, 33, and they're going to be great. And then all of a sudden this whole theory goes out the window. I don't know how to play these guys. I don't know how to value them. But I think in about 3 years, we're going to have a much better sense of what these quarterbacks can do when they get into their early 30s. I'm BJ Riddell, Fantasy Football for Winners. Email me anytime at fantasyfootballforwinners@gmail.com. We'll see you tomorrow.